And we're back. I told my dad to wait a second, and he didn't read it. It's fine. It's fine. But it's kind of along the theme of family. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to obviously reflect on the family that you have and what your takeaways are, whether they're good, bad, ugly, tremendously grateful. But Thanksgiving is kind of traditionally in the United States that time where, whether it's the marketing or whatever, it's very, very focused on this idea of like togetherness. Christmas is maybe a little more intimate, more like the family, your immediate family. And then if you want to do something special, yeah, like everybody, because it's one of those holidays where you have to like, you wake up and you open presents normally. And then for Thanksgiving, it's like, it's eating. So it's this idea like people can wake up wherever they are and they can drive to your house or, whatever. So Thanksgivings have a tendency to be much sort of more numbers, more people. And I've gone through a lot of evolutions on how I've viewed my relationship with my family. So much to the point that I don't feel strongly kind of one way or the other. I'm just overall grateful. There's obviously, you have your dark pockets and then you've got your super bright spots. And with our family, with my family specifically, we grew up all over the world, kind of. My father was in the Air Force for like 22 years. And he retired when I was around, I don't know, like between 7 and 10. This kind of stuff where it's like, how old were you when this happened? And what year was that? Like, right over my head, totally escapes me. Like, does not register at all. But he retired when I was about that old. And I was born in Long Beach, California, and we moved to Naples, Italy pretty soon after, about a year or two after I was born. And we were in Naples, Italy for about between 5 and 7 years. Again, I've always said 7 years, but could very well be a different time for sure. And then we moved to Grand Forks, North Dakota, and that's where he retired. And my parents aren't together anymore. They were still together at that time. And it still wouldn't be like another 10 years plus until they would finally separate. And then 10 years after that, finally divorce. But something I've learned as growing up, and then after North Dakota, we went to Boston, settled in Boston for a long time. I left Boston after I had my son and I graduated. And then I kind of ping-ponged a little bit all over the place. Ended up in LA, blah, blah, blah. But when I think about the history of my family and what we've been through individually and as a group, I think that was the hardest part, was being the witness and also accepting my own experience. I'm the youngest of 3. And even though my siblings had way more poignant sort of memories, and have very sort of, they saw more, they saw more. And so when I would, talk about my experiences, I think I was immediately shut down very early on. And so I think what I learned was, you don't have an experience. Your experience is like to witness and empathize with, the people in front of you. And you're just kind of along for the ride. And through that, and that was like the majority of my life. It wasn't until I was in college. It was really funny that, a therapist, like through college, it's actually really funny. He was a nice guy. He was like, do you notice that every time you talk about your experience, you say we or us? And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah. He's like, every time I ask you about what was your experience like with your father, or what was your experience like with your mother, you'll say, we were blah, 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 or it was really tough for us, and da, 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 da. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember very specifically being like, you are good. It's like, that was amazing. I was like, this is why people do therapy. And that was the greatest gift I could have ever been given. I feel like from that point on, I became very intentional, but also just trying to unpack like the why, not just, oh, just do different. It was like, why am I making that choice? To speak from that perspective, and I went all manner of which ways in terms of like, feeling more important when I talked in that voice, because I felt included. Even though I was really speaking from my own experience. And then another part of me was like, you don't have any experience. So, there was a lot of different directions, of just all manner of exploration when it came to trying to unpack that. And finally, I got to a point, and it doesn't happen suddenly. These kind of revelations, they don't happen suddenly. They kind of breathe themselves into your cellular structure, right? And this was no different. There's for sure times where I still feel like I'm going back to that place of being the youngest in the youngest in the family, the attention seeker, the the emotional one, the this and the that. And I go back to all these labels that I kind of grew up with. But I think the biggest gift that allowed me to eventually net out was that I don't have to feel any one way or the other. I also think that the fact that I have created a life around me where I have a tremendous amount of buffer. My family's all over the place. My brother is in the Philippines now. My sister's in Spain. And My mom's in Spain. My dad's in LA, but he's like an hour plus away. So everything feels very controlled and on my terms, which is the biggest thing. And getting my late diagnosis for autism and ADHD made me realize that, like, when I am around my family, I do feel crazy. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. That's something I realized pretty early on. It's always easy to pick a villain, right? It's usually the obvious villain, the one who like creates the most chaos or creates the most pain. But somewhere along the way, you realize there's another villain. And you realize that person is the person who allowed this to happen. Or that person is the person that didn't talk to you or chose not to have difficult conversations with you, right? About the villain. And then you feel like everyone's the villain. And then you're just like, wait a second. These, like, no one chose this, right? I mean, we can go into the spiritual aspect of like what it is we choose, we come into this life, et cetera, et cetera. But in our consciousness and in the intentionality of the moment, like we're not sitting here going, yes, 10 steps from now, just wait. just you wait and see, right? And it's just about like doing your best in the moment with the tools that you have. And sometimes that means digging a hole with your bare hands that have been chopped off at the nubs, right? Like you're not working with anything and you're just creating. And when that happens, it's just chaos. And afterwards, it's only afterwards, after the chaos, can we go, okay, let me look at all this data. Let me look at this and see if there's any patterns here. And that's when we realize, okay, there's actually data here. You don't just look at chaos and go, well, there's nothing to see. Right? We're trying to extrapolate something. And I do genuinely feel like once I started not just accepting, of course, obviously, that like this is no one's fault. It's just what the cards we've been dealt, as terrible as they are and as easy as it would be to point fingers and say, again, like the obvious villains, right? You just kind of very easily can dig yourself into a hole of anger and of despair and of hopelessness and a feeling of like not closure, because it's the past. And even if it still exists in the present in some way, shape, or form, the difference is that you have autonomy now. Something happens after you're a child. Once you're like, literally, for some people it happens earlier, but when you're like 16 to 18, push it, say 21, whatever. And even as early as like 13 or whatever. But normally, right, it's not until our late teens that we start to really feel the sense of autonomy. Like I can buy my own phone if I want to. I can pay my own bills if I want to. I can get a job if I want to. I can like vote, right? Like there's this shift that happens. And in that autonomy, we start to create. We start to create with our choices. And for the first like 10, 15 years, I'm talking about once you have autonomy, first like 10, 15 years, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like literally, it's chaos. It's raw decision making, and you're not really truly thoughtful about it because you haven't seen the after effects. You only know where you came from. You only have what you were created with, what you were surrounded by. You're a pure product of, right? Whatever that is. Your environment, your family, your surroundings, your circumstances, blah, 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 blah. You're a pure product of that. Yes, you're your own person, blah, blah, blah. That's the autonomy part. Okay, now you do all this decision making. Who you want to have a relationship with, what kind of financial decisions you make, where you want to live or not live, or who you live with, who you don't live with, right? You're like just, again, throwing a spaghetti at the wall, okay? I don't know how many, there was like 3 accents in there, but you're literally working with what you got. And then after like those 10, 15 years, and mind you, this can all kind of happen simultaneously, but there's a level of pure ignorance and arrogance when you're young, where you're like, I know what I'm doing. I believe in what I feel, right? Everything is intrinsic. Everything is just, there's this internal drive for whatever fucking reason, but it's there. Or whatever fear you have or whatever, right? The decisions you make are a pure product of the closest to you, which is where you came from. Now you have this block of time where you're creating all this raw decision making. Then after about 10, 15 years, sometimes sooner than that, you go, what the fuck? Right? What the fuck? This is not working for me, right? Or maybe it is working for you. Usually it's not, though. Usually there's like a very obvious what's not working. It can either be career, it can be boyfriends or girlfriends, it can be family, right? Attachment, boundaries. There can be very obvious, this isn't working for me. And because you're frustrated, right? Because you're like, subconsciously, and your body is going, I'm supposed to have autonomy. I'm supposed to have free will. And I keep making decisions because I have that. And yet I'm in the same fucking cycle, because now you're looking at the data map of all the raw decisions you've made and you go, what the shit? Why is there a cluster of fuck over here? And why do I keep having friends that are vampires? Or why do I keep letting my family back into my life when they're still assholes? Or why am I still getting myself in relationships with married people, right? Or whatever it is. But you now have data, and it's beautiful. Okay. This is a gift. This is a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift. Okay. It is the most beautiful gift that you can ever experience, is making mistakes in the rawest form of yourself and get to see what happened. Not what happened, but like what decisions you made. And then the what happened is the unpacking. And we end up doing that for like another 10, 15 more years, honestly. Doesn't mean you're not it doesn't mean you wait 10, 15 years and then you get better. But it's like you are now in this cycle of trying to do better with now the knowledge, right? So when another cute little thing come up and you're like, oh, that is my vibe. Oh, I'm feeling them shoulders. I'm feeling that jawline, right? Then that little part of you goes, bitch. Remember the last 4 dudes that you felt that same way about? Right? You have a choice to make. What kind of choice do you want to make? You get a text on your phone, someone in your family, and they're doing the same bullshit that they always do. And you can easily get mad and you can be like, this motherfucker, they always do this, blah, 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 blah. When in reality, again, choices, period. You have a choice. What do you want to do? Well, every time I respond, it just creates more chaos. I feel like no matter how I respond, no matter how I broach this, I'm going to lose. Then don't respond. Don't respond. There's a great term that I love for people who are in your area, they're in your life, and you can't disown them, right? And the drama is too much to cut them off. I've been doing this for a long time, and only recently did I see that there's a term for it, and it's called gray rocking. Gray rocking, I love that. And it means when you just meet the moment with neutrality. You're not going over the top. You're not being a bitch. You're giving the minimum. And normally people will just be like, oh, something's up with them, but I'm not gonna, maybe they're tired or something, right? Maybe on another episode I can demonstrate exactly what that's like, how to do that. But that is an approach I take that I don't use it all the time, but when I need to. And I'll say it has saved me and my sanity a tremendous amount. Because again, people are who they are. And when I stopped faulting people for who they are, and I instead decide to work around them if they have to be around, then I'm going to work around them. If they don't have to be around and I don't need them around, and there's no real attachment or prerequisites for needing them around, guess what? You're not a priority in my life. Not only are you not a priority in my life, I'm not texting you. I'm not messaging you. I'm not calling you. I'm not talking to you. There's this woman at my daughter's gymnastics, and I don't even fucking look at her. It would be so easy. And she has tried to get into a couple of conversations with me. I don't even fucking register this woman because I already know from the get-go she will cause me too much goddamn stress. I'm not even kidding. Because the one miniature conversation I got in with her, she was like over the top and unnecessarily combative and competitive, even though we were just exchanging stories, supposed to be exchanging stories, but she was like trying to like one up my shit and then challenging my details. It was a lot. It was a lot. Guess what? You can't change who you are, right? You are who you are. And that's cool. And I'm happy for you. I'm not even going to give you a chance to get into a conversation with me because I'm a waste of time for both of us. You know what I mean? So there you go. But I have the same outlook with my family. And when I realized, family is like everything you need to learn about acceptance and understanding, you learn through family. Family is the biggest lesson. If you can put your ego aside, which is hard because we get really defensive when it comes to our family in one way or another. Either you're fiercely loyal or you're fiercely don't give a fuck or whatever, somewhere in the middle and confused. But if you can put your ego aside for a little bit and try to see the lessons through the lessons, it will set you up so much to understand. Sure, yes, yourself, but more importantly, people. People. We don't get to see people in their nastiness and in their humanness as much as we see our own family. And there's a reason for that. It is meant to teach us humility. It's meant to teach us understanding. It's meant to teach us that being human is flawed by design. And when we realize that's everyone, not just our family, because we can very easily be like, oh, you don't know my family this and my family that. Believe me, when I tell you I have heard and I have been witness to deeply terrible, terrible, terrible things when it comes to people's relationships with their families. And I don't say accept the behavior. And I don't say that that's okay. What I do say that it is a study of the human condition and the range with which we will all be exposed to at some point in our lives of what the human condition is capable of in the best and in the worst, right? And the best being that you can have really terrible relationships with people and you can find acceptance too. You have people that go their whole lives. I was listening to this interview with Amy Poehler and Ina, God help me, she's the Barefoot Contessa. Shit. Gretton? Something like that. Anyways, and she says that she was saying how she had like a really terrible relationship with her father and that he was a truly, he just was not a good parent. He was not a good parent. He wasn't a good father. And they had a very strained relationship. And I guess they were having a get together. They were celebrating her book being published, and it was like put on through her publisher or something like that. And he was there. And he said something that ever since then, our relationship has completely changed. And this woman is like hella old. She said, he came over to me and he told me, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry. And I love that because in a way, it's what we all wish we could hear. And for me, I've accepted a long time ago, nothing is owed to me. Nothing is owed to any of us because we're so powerful in what we can create for ourselves that anything in addition to that is a miracle. The only thing we owe to ourselves is to create the life that we want. And ideally, believe that that is the life we deserve. And I've definitely done that for myself. And in that process, I have loved my family because I accept them not just for who they are, but I see myself in them, and not with contempt and a desire to not be them, even though there's still parts where I'm like, God help me. Please don't. I just don't want to be that person. But I'm also still able to see where I get my stuff and love it. Be like, I get my laugh from my dad, and I love that. I get my sense of humor from my mom, and I love that. And I've learned to appreciate myself as a mother and as an ambitious individualist through my siblings, because they've always told me how impressed they were with the mom that I was as a single parent for 10 years. They only ever sang my praises, and maybe that experience wasn't perfect and I didn't feel like I got the support I needed in other ways, but that was the only support I needed. Now that I look back and I realize that was actually the only support I needed. Because in reality, I didn't want people up in my business. So even when I get sad, like, oh, my brother and sister, they never called me or checked in on me or blah, blah, blah. Or even my dad or my mom rarely checked in on me. But now I appreciate it because that was what they thought that I needed. And I think they were right, you know? So all this to say that I'm grateful for so much. I'm grateful for the family that I was dealt, and I'm grateful for myself and the process that I've allowed myself to understand not just those relationships better, but the relationship with myself and with others through those experiences. So I hope that wherever you are and however your Thanksgiving went, even if it was deeply dramatic, honestly, I'm like, I hope it's a good story to tell in 10 years or something to unpack. Like, man, that is that's a chunky bag of cats to get through. And it's data. At the end of the day, it's data, right? It's something to give us reason for so much. And I hope it's full of laughter. And I hope it's full of inside jokes and traditions and experiences that carry over into the next time you see each other. And it fills your cup fills your cup over and just endlessly something that you can tap into whenever you need to remember that you have a capacity to experience joy and love the company of others, even if you're a little hermit and you like to stay home, like me. um, I actually didn't say what we're doing for Thanksgiving. We always get Russian food. Actually, I think I did say that. I'm not sure. Um, but we're getting Russian food. My father's over. And yeah. And then my youngest, she's going to be turning 2 on Friday. So again, you guys will listen to this mucho, mucho later. But all that to say that, yeah, we're going to be enjoying our little corner over here. And I hope that you will have enjoyed yours as well. All right. I love you guys. You're amazing. You're awesome. You're already perfect. And you got this. I'll talk to you later.